So I
Well,
did send an email, but in case you guys didn't hear it, they're here to discuss some projects with combined ag and solar.
So if I could
I got that.
just start at the top.
Sure.
So again, Chet Feldman, I'm with Distributed Sun. This is Caleb, he's with United Agrivoltaics, right? So we are solar project developers, been active in New York State since 2012. And we did do the second megawatt scale project over in Lansing. Caleb worked on that back in the day, 2014. And then again, we did the first large scale array in Ontario County with Cornell at their ag experiment station. So we've been working in central New York for as long as there's been solar going up in scale. And Caleb, as I said, he's been working at several of these sites over the years. So we are here in Canandaigua to talk about some new opportunities. You know, we've got a couple landowners in the west side of town who we've engaged with. They're near circuits. We're in discussions with RG&E on, we have to pay them to upgrade and connect to their system. But what we want to talk to the town of Canandaigua about is, we put in a sketch plan package we put that in just at the end of June. And this committee here actually did take a look at our projects back in their July meeting, and I think analyzed the properties in the rubric that has always been analyzed of, there are some Honioe loams, there are some soils that are deemed prime farmland if drained, and prime farmland on some of these parcels. And this committee had the recommendation that got passed to the planning board that if a solar project was installed on those parcels, that would be a loss of valuable agricultural land to Canandaigua. And so in August, I connected and I presented to the planning board, and I think we had a good discussion. I said, there's a lot of things about learning about solar and where the industry is right now in New York State. But I think why I'm back here is because I told them, we're Distributed Sun. We're doing things a bit differently, and things are different now than when the town passed its law in 2016, right? So we use a variety of, environmental measures to minimize our impact and minimize loss of agricultural land, including sheep grazing, pollinator-friendly grasses, you name it. We're trying to minimize our impact and keep in line with responsible development. So we had that meeting with the planning board in August, and as I worked with the planning board chair, and I said, I think we're doing something different than what is a conventional project, and so I'd like to be considered different as such. And so that's when I called Caleb back and said, Caleb, I believe, you tell me your numbers, but I believe what we're doing here is a real valuable agricultural benefit to the area. So much of what he'll get into is so much of our land is imported, and we're all doing a whole bunch of other things there. We're going to be helping local sheep farmers in many other ways, but I'll just say that we're here. We've been responsibly developing solar plants for going on 10 years, and we look forward to being able to do more, finding mutually agreeable solutions. And I think that's why I just want to have Caleb take the floor and talk about all his experience going from small herds out to big growth, and I think big useful agriculture, and I'll turn it to you. So
yeah, so thanks guys. My name is Caleb Scott, and I am the vice president of the American Solar Grazing Association, which is the industry leader in all things agrivoltaic right now. And I'm also the owner of United Agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics is agriculture and photovoltaics smashed together, farming on solar. So this is something that I've been doing since 2015. uh, 7th generation family farmer. We lost our dairy farm in the 80s, which was heartbreaking and a tragedy that a lot of people faced when milk prices went down, unfortunately. But it stuck with me, and we were always farming, but just in a different way and not on our land that was our land at one point. So that being said, you know, I understand the loss of land in a different way. And I'm like also on our local ag committee because I understand the importance of farming for the future, for food security reasons and just for general lifestyle reasons, to be completely honest. But so I've put together this presentation for you guys at the request of Distributed Sun, and it's basically what we've experienced firsthand as farmers going forward. So this is myself right here with one of my flocks. You can see there's a tri-purpose flock here. So these are mostly Icelandic sheep. We have found that on solar sites, we can have a higher stocking density of sheep. So there's actually a net gain in agricultural use right now. And I'm going to hit the Spark Notes because some of this might be a little dry if you haven't already read it. But you can scroll down to another great shot of myself with a little lamb. You can't get enough of little pictures of sheep. That was a little bit about the bio that I just went through. So in here, you know, we've pretty strategically gone through these particular sites and how I actually believe that with an agrivoltaic model, there will be a net gain of agricultural use on these sites as opposed to corn, soybean, or cattle. And those were the three things.
I'm going to keep going down.
Yeah. So we broke these sites out pretty specifically into what their current uses was, what the current yields would be based on those current uses, based off from the readily available data that we have for those metrics. And obviously they're even outdated. So with the price of everything going up, fuel, with the price of fertilizer going up, a lot of these numbers are actually going to be more in the favor of grazing sheep and less in the favor of mechanically harvested crops that are using fertilizers and other,
Yeah, if I could just pause, but we'll get to that. But are you guys familiar with these parcels that we're talking about of the location? So that if you're familiar with the locations, we can just jump to his comparison.
Yeah, we
North.
Okay.
North.
Yeah, the most northwestern parcel in
Yeah.
town is
Yeah.
there, and then one on County Road 30 on the south
That's
side.
what I
So-
used.
So maybe just jump down to Caleb's table so you can see
yeah. So-
what the comparison looks
And
like.
welcome, by the way, I'm Caleb
Sorry about
Scott.
that.
No, that's quite all right. So these were some of the metrics that we found. And again, this is based on data from last year that will be, that would be updated. But when we have sheep on solar, it's very, very productive. Our animals are gaining more because they're able to have a more variety of diet, which means they've got the legumes and stuff from the shade, and they're also not expending as much energy out in an open pasture dealing with the elements. So they're always able to be in the sun. They're always or out of the sun. And so our lambs on average are putting about 15% more weight on as a result of being under solar. And in additional to that, over the same course of time as open pasture. And in addition to that, we're finding our stocking densities are higher. So whereas in open pasture, we might have 2 to 3 sheep per acre rotationally grazed, under solar, we can extend that quite a bit. Right now,
Why do you think you can do that?
I think that it's because of the variation in vegetation, and I think that they're just getting more protein because there's more shade tolerant grasses, and so they're just putting more gain with less stress. And
Are you specifically planting those grasses or just assuming that?
yeah, so that is one of the things that when we are going on the sites, we say, okay, here's our preferred grass seed mixture. We worked with Ernst Seed Company to develop a blend called Fuzz and Buzz. This is with United Agrovoltaics. Ernst Seed Company said, oh, okay, here are some high protein, low growth grasses that are good for pasture that are also going to fulfill the needs of the solar scorecards when it comes to pollinator friendly. When we rotate the sheep back and forth on the site, we're deadheading these flowers and then bringing them back to the other, and our flowers are blooming, and it's incredible to see the just sites bursting with flowers. And then the sheep come in and mow them down, and then they want to rebloom again and flower. So we have an extended blooming rate on our flowers. So we're producing more honey when we put our bees on these sites than on sites where we're not, that are on sites where they might just be getting the goldenrod flow, or they might just be moving them from site to site to try and get the basswood or something. These sites are consistently producing honey, and and it's great stuff. So I didn't even really get into the honey matrix here, but one hive every 25 acres can add another about $35 per acre at 150 pounds of honey. So it's another metrics to add in that makes valuable sense. And it's something that Distributed Sun is thinking about, but it's not even really in here. This was mainly the sheep versus cattle versus soy versus corn. Cattle I put in there, not because more just as a difference between sheep to see, but right now these sites being corn and soy, these are roughly the net profits you'd be getting from that acreage. And again, as I said before, probably this year they won't hit that with the price early on of fuel and the price of fertilizer going up so much. But hopefully our farmers can get these numbers. But it's yet to be seen a little bit.
I have a question about how this all works. So somebody is farming, let's say I'm farming the land right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't own it. So the landowner is gonna lease the property for solar.
Mhm.
You're gonna come in and put the sheep on there, or who's actually farming the land after that?
Well, it depends.
On the solar side or the non-solar side? Right, I mean, because
So if we're talking about the sheep, on the land that we would say would be lost from agriculture normally, you're saying that we're gonna benefit it by grazing sheep or something.
So United Agrovoltaics, as a company, would like to bid on these projects, and we do bid on these projects, but obviously for scalability, we use local farm partners to execute this work. So say a farmer wanted to get on, but they're like, I need $100,000 worth of sheep. I have dairy cows now. We'll provide the sheep for them. We'll help them get started. We'll work with them to get their current operation switched over, and also provide the insurances needed that otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford, because they're just such a high bar to get on these solar sites. So we work with a lot of farm partners. We've got 26 farm partners right now across the Northeast that are operating underneath United Agrovoltaics. There's also, I myself am operating underneath United Agrovoltaics because I own Highland Grazing. So on the sites here, they're my personal sites. So I have a 3-hour radius that I'm comfortable working in on my own, but outside of that, there would be other things. But it's really up to Distributed Sun. Whoever gives them the best price is going to be getting the contract. I mean, ultimately, these are projects to be bid on by solar grazers. These are the metrics that we use when we're bidding our sites out. As for the American Solar Grazing Association that I'm the vice president of, We are a 501c6 trade organization. So we're a nonprofit organization that when a farmer comes to us, say a farmer in Canandaigua, we're to go, man, I really want to do this. This seems like a great opportunity for my family. We would go, okay, here's the keys to the kingdom. This is what you need to know. These are the watering systems. These are the master service agreements that you need to be working with the people. We provide that information to them so that we can just grow the industry. It is purely nonprofit, and I don't get paid to do that. I've helped build that company up or that organization up from day one, and I'm the vice president at this time. But my passion is to make sure that farmers are actively farming solar all across our country.
So these sites need to be, these sites have to be built and planned with some of this in mind, like you're not gonna be running water lines when you got solar panels already in place and stuff, so you kinda have to go into it with.
So Caleb, we're already sort of working in on that, he's part of his advisement scope is we need to have, either we get public water or we're gonna have well taps certain places so the local farmer doesn't have to haul water in. There's certain divisions and certain protections around our equipment so that there's segregation around that so that,
The sheep aren't interfering with the inverter
there's-
pads and
there-
stuff like
there's-
that.
There's no confusion for the sheep and that they're out of the way of where
So-
people really need to work.
Essentially, they are being built specifically with solar grazing in mind, especially when they engage with a company like ours that's saying, this is how we would suggest you do it. They're paying us to get our information and say, this is what the farmer needs to do a nice job on it. This particular site, I would probably, because it's close enough to my house, I may put my personal sheep on here. But again, I go to Virginia and have these same sort of meetings. So I'm not putting my sheep in Virginia necessarily. Actually, I do have some sheep in Virginia right now, but that's because my father-in-law lives there, but it's a little bit different.
I went through the document and some of the things that were not necessarily clear. So sheep is the preferred species. Is there an absolutely no for combination species?
Oh, so that's a great question. We're doing research and development right now, and actively also looking for partners to do development research with. We've just started doing Cooney pigs, which are pasture pigs. They're super cute. I love them. They're my personal pigs. Mostly I love them for the fact that they produce bacon on solar, but we have used SUNY Cortland has allowed us to do some research and development on that. We have been effectively, not without giving them any supplemental grain, they have been gaining on grass alone, which they're designed to do, pigs. So, and they're not running around because they have a flat nose. So there is possibilities for other things. We just need to look into them more. I've done research and development also with, and we're not actively doing this on any sites at this time, chicken tractors. So you take a chicken tractor, you move it down the lane, clipwing poultry. We've worked with and talked about doing pheasant release programs on these sites, bobwhite quail. There's all sorts of great things you can do on these sites once you're not mechanically mowing them, because you put the bobwhite quail on and start to try and reintroduce them into our area, which they're pretty much extinct from here now.
And then there was an interesting one, when I was doing some research on this, it's just funny to find it in a federal document of this National Renewable Energy Laboratories also talked about, in some places they're testing guard donkeys, which I didn't understand that guard donkeys were a real thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're not there yet.
they're
We're-
really
we're-
good
we're-
on the west for sheep operations.
Yeah,
So I didn't know that when I read that, but
we've
again,
put
we're
an emu in with our sheep before. They don't seem to bother the panels much, and they tend to do pretty decent guard jobs. But these sites are generally fenced in a way that we don't worry about predation. They're, the lead edges down to the ground are buried. They're high tensile chain link or whatever you guys are using. I mean, the Lansing site is that one has like
Lansing was conventional chain link.
okay, and well, I'm actually thinking of the one at the other one.
Dryden is agricultural.
Yeah.
But
But
We
anyway,
have
some
a
of the
few
sites that we're
choices.
on are using like 8 foot high, like almost like black cattle fencing, and it looks like it's like disappears, but it's very good for the sheep because it has a gradation on the bottom.
But you're not doing any bigger animals. Cattle.
So we've done cattle on the exterior, where we just put a simple cattle fence around and do the perimeter, as opposed, because a lot of times they don't want vegetation growing up on the outside, and this was at a site in Virginia as well.
And to parallel that, like we have talked to the racking companies about trying to elevate it higher so that we could bring more cattle in, but the costs they quoted us were
Yeah,
not
it
something
ends
we
up
were ready
being-
to-
I think from what I've seen, it's like so much more expensive to try and make them accessible to cattle that there's not really a cost benefit. The sheep can pretty much operate on the sites as they would be engineered normally, and the sheep will actually even eat the sites. So a lot of the sites we get on did not have considerations for sheep prior to us getting on them. So now we have companies reaching out to us going, what can we do to make this more attractive? But we set up those IBC water totes for watering, and sheep actually drink a very small amount of water compared to most other animals. I put out 80 sheep on one of our sites this year, and even though it was dry, because of dew in the morning and because there may be a small natural spring here or there, they went through 80 sheep went through less than one 250 gallon IBC tote for this season. And now they're not even touching it because it's so dewy in the morning, they're just getting off. And this neat thing that I've seen is they go along the edge of the panels and they like lick the dew that rolls down in it.
Condenses on.
Yeah, it like rolls down and creates like a little water trough for them, so that as they're eating, they're just like licking the water off. It's really fun to see. But there's not a huge water demand, but having access to a well on site means that we don't have to haul water in, and that's a big savings for us. And just again, a 110 electric, so we can keep the sheep there further into the season with a stinger in a water bucket, so that they have more winter forage. The other thing is we can use these sites way further into the winter on our solar sites. So we've increased now the amount of sheep per acre. We've increased the amount of gain we're getting per acre. And now we've also increased by almost 2 full months our grazing season, because the amount of moisture that's held underneath the panels means that grass stays longer into the summer months and it stays greener. And also in the winter months, the summer months, the sheep are out eating the lanes and the lead edge of the panels, and they're sleeping underneath the panels. But then as the snowier season comes, the sheep are still foraging. Half the site is full of grass and there's no snow cover underneath there. So they're actually out there eating like into December, January. So we don't pull our ram lambs off until after Christmas, and they're just grazing. We're not augmenting their feed at all. They're not eating the things that they prefer, but they're also not pregnant and they're not lactating. So they have all those summer reserves, so we can actually let them eat the prickers down and do more browsing into the winter months, which is a huge. So if you're trying to hit certain ethnic markets for us, that's a big gain, that we don't have to bring them back to the market, or we don't have to bring them back to the farm so soon and start feeding them hay off our own fields. We're still getting these net benefits of having them out eating underneath the solar late into the season. So there's huge benefits, I think. And as you'll see here, the net benefit, I believe, to be correct, based on all that we've found, we're getting paid to provide a service. We're getting paid also, in addition to the lamb that we're selling, we're getting paid to maintain the vegetation, which is a fixed budget cost.
That is sort of where this all started, is that, early designs, we had to worry about grass coming over the front edge of the panels and shading them and losing productivity. Then we found, oh, sheep control that, and then it just started to become a,
So we get paid to
reinforced-
feed our animals, essentially, right? I mean, so when you're thinking about it from a perspective of like, oh, a lawnmower is gonna come in and charge on a site, maybe, I don't know, $30,000 to do this mowing 3 times a year. We might come into a site and say, yeah, we'll do it for 25. And we're getting paid, we provide a better service with the sheep because they're maintaining the grass at a more consistent level versus letting it come out of compliance, cutting it down after everything's gone to seed, goldenrods everywhere. Our sheep are eating that goldenrod, keeping it from going to seed, keeping the pastures good, resequestrating carbon back into the soil, making the soil more healthy than what it would be if it were being mechanically mown, and more healthy than what it would be if you're planting rotational crops and using fertilizers to add to the soil. So ultimately, it's a net benefit for the environment for sure. It's definitely a net benefit for the ag income because, again, farming, getting paid to feed your animals is kind of a no-brainer. And then, but it's not, and I say, it's not just let's set it and forget it. There are other things that our farm partners and that the sheep farmer is obligated to do, right? It is a service. It is a true service. It's not like, oh, we're just putting our sheep out there and then somebody else is coming in and taking care of the stuff the sheep don't eat. These are contracts that state like, if there's thistles, if there's burdocks, if there's other things that are growing up into the panels, the farmers are taking care of them. But they would do that in their own fields anyway, you know?
So let me back up a little bit. When Bob asked you about who puts the sheep on what the contracts, you talk about a bidding process. Is that farmers bidding towards you
Yes.
to get the contracts? So the amount that gets paid to the farmer, that's what it's variable?
right, so we have a service, right, as I said, we start out with, we don't want grass to come over the front edge of our thing, and you know, we have to make sure all the vegetation is controlled so that it doesn't get intertwined with our wires. So something needs to be there, and we say, we could go to someone who mechanically mows it, or here's this other option of, you know, bring your sheep in and you'll have much less mechanical work to do. We go out and we say, United Agrivoltaics or some other farmer who has this level of insurance, how much, you know, what do you think is a fair rate to do that? And if Caleb quoted me $500 an acre, but I've got someone here in Canandaigua who says, well, I could do it for 300, I'd say, your insurance good? You check all the other boxes, right? Well, Caleb, sorry, I might have to go with this local guy because this local guy or gal can perform my service, hits my business requirements, and it is available for that. So, you know, have to be a cold businessman every once in a while, but yeah.
Other than that bidding process, there is not a process of landowner has first right, prior farmer using the land has second right, then local community, then open to anyone.
So we would, you know, I'm obviously in discussion with our landowners, right? Like they are not farmers. So they're actually currently both leasing land to Brock Acres. There's corn on the one on County Road 30. There's soy up the northwest portion of town. For the one on County Road 30, there's still 40 plus acres to do conventional farming outside of what we would be doing with solar. On the one at the northwest, the DePrima property, it's probably only going to be about 15, 20 acres left after. So I don't know if someone's really going to want to farm that, but you know,
There'll be
we've got
somebody
to
want to
work.
farm that.
We've got to work in a local community where we are. I mean, that's what we're trying to do.
But you guys don't have a normal criteria of preference to,
So in
and I'm just coming from the side of
right.
Tano
So in times past, if our landowner, which has happened in a project we did in town of Middlesex over in Yates County, the landowner said, you know what, I'm going to pick up sheep, and I'd like to do that. And we said, Jan, go for it. Get your sheep, get your insurance ready, and you'll come in. So we are Distributed Sun, I think, is reasonably flexible and ready for something like that because we're not some giant corporate, you know, we're not some multinational. I could introduce you to our principals one day, but yeah, someone who comes to me with a good proposition, I can listen to it. And
I'm
Maybe.
a little mixed up. Are you talking about replacement of cows versus all new installation of sheep?
so
Well, there's currently not cows on this,
Yeah,
on
so-
either
so-
of these
this-
sites.
This one, right, but as a matter of going forward, would you be talking about replacing cows with sheep, or
we're just from my perspective, what I've worked on with my company, we're not really considering cows for working inside of our solar array. We're
okay?
The
on-
cows are a
on
little
many of
too
our project-
destructive.
Yeah.
They scratch up against the panels and break them, you know, and the panels aren't high enough to really keep the cows from doing too much destruction.
So, when we started working with Cornell many years ago, I mean, they obviously keep their eyes on all these things too. We want to have responsible development that provides multiple sustainability goals, right? And so adding sheep adding other environmental elements that round out the project in what we're doing is we're trying to make a full project, and that includes opening it up to some level of agriculture, and sheep are one of the most straightforward.
Yeah.
Normally, all of these solar contracts have an expiration date,
Mhm.
whether it's 10 years, 20 years. Are you consistently trying to match the grazing contract to the life of the
So-
panels, or do you renew
No,
or research
so
for
the
contracts?
way, there's multiple durations of interesting things. Our land lease contracts, they can go as far as 35 years, right? So that's a long term. And, even if Caleb was great, I think 35 years, do you want to retire in 35 years or?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So
We go to 1 to 3 year
Yes.
contracts.
for our
So-
perspective, 3 is sort of as long as we'd want to go to start, just because 3 gives him or the sheep farmer time to sort of work in and have a plan for the land. When you're getting into 5, you're just sort of getting into the world, and the market changes, and we might have some different needs in 5 years, or the sheep farmer might have some different needs.
And in 5 years, there
So
may
we
be a
don't
lot
wanna go
more
too
sheep
long is
in
what
our
I'm saying.
country, and the price may be going down and down because people would be actively bidding more and more to get on these sites. Right now, we have a deficit in our country of sheep. We import 80% of our lamb into this country with a 10,000 mile footprint. That means we are not producing the amount of sheep we need to eat in our own country, which is kind of sad because we have a lot of fallow land. That being said, we could take every sheep in the United States and put them in the state of New York on solar right now. That's crazy. That means we should be competing with New Zealand for export of sheep, not importing sheep from New Zealand. The only way to make that happen, in my opinion, is to make it economically feasible for sheep farmers to do this. There is a huge demand for sheep right now. The auction barns cannot keep sheep. When you're looking at animal units, of 6 sheep and 12 lambs eat the same as a cow-calf combo. A cow-calf combo takes 14 months to age out. These guys are done in 5 to 7 months. These guys are getting $200 a head minimum at the sale barn. The calf raised out isn't even getting that. So we've got a faster replacement model. We've got a better market. There's actually why is New York competing with other states that are doing way better at raising larger cattle with economies of scale? We have the ability to outcompete them with sheep on solar. So we just need the economics work for our farmers. They just need to be educated that there is such a demand. I mean, there less than an hour from here, there's a place that butchers 400 lambs a week, and they're shipping them in from Texas. Why? Why are they shipping sheep at $5 a loaded mile from Texas to here to butcher sheep for New York City? It's crazy to me. Sheep are being shipped from New York then to Michigan. We need to figure out the best way to do this, obviously. But for the purposes of this conversation, what I want to share with you guys is that adding solar to a farm is a net ag benefit and not a reduction of ag usage. When you incorporate sheep. So when you guys go forward to the planning board with this newfound information, you can say, yeah, look, if they do these things in accordance with what the American Solar Grazing Association has outlined and with what these other sheep farmers have said works for them, then at that point, this site will be an ag benefit and will be producing more money for farmers than soy and corn, maybe 3 times as much. And that's a huge deal.
So let me go back to the contract duration. In this one, I didn't see anything of what the solar plan does with the land afterwards. We have gotten in the past in how are they rebuilding the land, and yeah, having animals is always better than just mowing. But what is your normal contract with the landowner, independent of the sheep?
Sure.
How do you guys come in, say, this is what we're gonna do for 20, 30, 35 years. This is what we're gonna do when we leave. This is how we're gonna turn it back.
Yep. So our contracts are, like I said, up to 35 years. We are responsible for everything inside the fence. We make all sorts of attestations about no hazardous materials, variety of other elements. I don't know if we were industry leading, but we were certainly early adopters on requiring, we are obligated to have a decommission at the end of the, we're obligated to pursue one of 3 tasks at the end of the 35 years. First one is business is good, right? Business is good for the landowner, business is good for the solar company. We say we should go for some more years. Both sides agree, they keep on going. Second option is the business side said, it wasn't so great, but the landowner says, oh, well, maybe I can make you an offer and we'll call it a fair market exchange and I'll buy it off you. So they have first right of offer to buy all the infrastructure and operating piece of equipment and infrastructure there off us. And then the third is both sides say, well, no, it's time to go. And we have a contractual and financial obligation to remove everything off the land and return it to original state. So it needs to be, fences come out, inverter pads come out, all the racking equipment with the piles with the screws in, they all come out, any trenching with wires, everything comes out. We decompact the land and we put it into some natural seed mix. That's part of our standard agreement. And then, New York State has also sort of seen the writing on the wall, and because these particular projects are located in agricultural areas, state listed agricultural zones, we have to notify Department of Ag and Markets, and there will be an environmental monitor on during construction to verify that we're not putting any hazardous materials, and here's where things are going underground, etc. We pay for that. We have that monitor that is filed with the state. We notify if we go down that third path 35 years down the road, we tell the state we're decommissioning. Same process happens in reverse of these are our records from 35 years ago. We had someone check out that environmental monitoring. The monitor comes out again, says, take everything out there, and there, return it to agricultural use. So that's there. And then just, if you were not familiar with town of Canandaigua law, there is a requirement for a decommissioning bond which
Correct.
we are already planning and accounting for. So, is that,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was a little
okay,
bit of the
yeah.
question, yeah, because
Back to the bidding, what's the typical range of what people are paying to rent for grazing?
so
They don't rent, they pay you.
right.
It's the
Correct.
opposite. He pays me.
Because
to graze.
otherwise, so my alternative is I don't do sheep. I pay, John Q lawn service, and he comes in with his mowers, his rotary mowers. He runs them up and down the thing. Then he's got to get some other guy to go in and get into the crevices, and he charges me, I don't know, $30,000, right? Something, whatever he chooses, right? He's a busy guy, and that's one option. The other is, okay, someone gets to come in, bring sheep, do all that stuff manually, and yes, sometimes they come in and they have to, get the
Sigh.
sign out and get some other things cut down. But I was talking to one of our other landowners in Tioga County, and he was getting paid $275 an acre, and that was a 99-acre site we did down there. So he's
Per mowing.
no for a year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but he lived right there. We built for his father-in-law, and he just said, all right, well, he took the guide from the American Solar Grazing
Yeah.
Association. He got himself, 200 ewes to start, and he's been taken off, and I fed him some other intel that maybe he should ask for a little more, because I know some people are paying $350 an acre.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb's seen people up to $500 an acre. So
Our,
I imagine that could, like anything,
So-
change in the future. But we need a service. We want to make sure we're not just leaving some
Yeah.
open grassland out there.
is a preparation on the field up for negotiation, because you talk about selecting the seed, you talked about potential water lines and access to the waters, you talked about a couple different things. Is that part of what gets negotiated ahead, or is that just a standard how you build your systems in hopes that someone will come and graze animals? So right now you may have a contract ready, but let's say that you were not lined up and you're gonna put in the system. Are you gonna still set it up for potential grazing animals if you don't have a contract, or you're gonna try to
So-
retrofit later?
So all our projects have had special grass seed mixes ready for grazing, right? That to us has been a standard. What has been, new advice that I've been incorporating into these projects is to have water pulled in sight, right? Such that the farmer doesn't have to go out or haul in extra water. So to me, that's the only extra concession I feel like I'm making ready for these projects. But otherwise,
they usually already have the 110 electric
Yep.
on at the inverters. So as long as the
That's where it
inverters are
checks.
fenced off, we can put our watering systems there and plug in a stinger to keep the water.
and we need the 110 because our technicians come onto site and basically they need to plug in stuff to do their diagnostics or some of their particular tests.
So the Cornell Atkinson study, back to the contract price, the Cornell Atkinson study from 2020, which was the most comprehensive solar grazing study in the nation to date, I believe. They said that the national average for solar grazing was $555 per acre. That was the national average. In places like Texas and in places like Oklahoma, and in places where they have large numbers of grazing animals and their systems are set up, the prices are much less, but they also have, less rainfall and less need, like the grass grows a little shorter and slower and is a little more higher in protein, so they can get away with a little more, so the prices are a little less. In the Northeast, it's really depending on the size of the site. Most of the sites are 2 megawatts or so they're 25 acres. A 25-acre site is more expensive than a 900 or than a 90-acre site because you have almost the same infrastructure, the same amount of trips there. as you get bigger, there's economies of scale. So if we go on to, say, for example, a 25 acre site, our general metrics, if it's a bronze level and we go bronze, silver, platinum, depending on what they decide to give us in concessions for the grazing, the price goes down and down and down and down. So the more they make it attractive for us, the better price we give them, basically. So if it's a bronze level site, which basically is like it's fenced in and that's about it. They didn't really care about the water. I've got to bring it in. They didn't really care about the plants. I have extra whacking to do with thistles and stuff that were, volunteers that came on site. In that scenario, it's about $480. And we don't have a problem getting that price usually. There's more demand for our sheep than there are solar sets available. Or I should say there's more solar sets available, so the demand for our sheep is greater than we have sheep available for them. On a 1,000-acre site, that especially one that's made some considerations, you're looking at half of that, like closer to this $200, because we still have to have equipment on site full time. Usually it's like a UTV and a skid steer with an offset flail mower. We've got shipping containers for our animal wellness checks. We've got hog panels set up for catchment areas. There's infrastructure that we need on these larger sites, but we're grazing 3,000 sheep. So the advantage to that on tax-free land. So there's huge advantages to that, but buying 3,000 sheep and trying to roll that in, like, not a lot of banks are like, yeah, we'll give you $1 million line of credit to go buy 3,000 sheep. So you got to really consider these sorts of things in how you build your flock up, or using, like I was saying, the overwinter forage. So you mow the lead edge of the panels because your sheep obviously can't keep up. And then in the winter, they really do the job by eating underneath the panels where the snow isn't. So there's ways that we go around it, but in general, on these larger sites, what we're seeing on our end is that the price is averaging more closer to like the 250 range for sites that have made some concessions. And these are sites from Newmarket, Ohio to Alta Vista, Virginia to Princess Anne, Maryland. We've got sites literally from Florida to Michigan, and so we have a pretty good understanding of what the market is. But again, in the long term, as the sheep numbers go up and as the more and more farmers start bringing sheep to market. Right now, they're not bringing sheep to market. There's a huge deficit because they're all going to solar, because everyone wants to grow their numbers. So there's a huge demand in market. So the price right now is out of control for sheep, but it's also out of control to buy them because, like I said, we have like in 1860s, there was like 55 million sheep, and now there's 500,000 in our country. Like, that's crazy. We just don't have an industry at all. We're importing our sheep, and the average American right now is only eating 1.3 pounds of lamb per person and a year, and that number will go up as the number of sheep goes up, because the price at market will come down as economies of scale start to come into play. It's so that's why these 3-year contracts work well, because our prices are, as these farmers start buying double-decker tractor trailers to move sheep around and start really increasing their operations, they're not, but they need the money right now. There's no money there yet and the industry hasn't been built. That's where this comes in, so the price will come down in time, both for lamb on the market and for these prices. In 35 years, we may be like Great Britain, where people are paying solar farmers to put sheep on sites, because in Great Britain there's so many sheep and there's not that much solar and there's no more land, and so the farmers are like, I'll lease that for $70 an acre. But That's not the case in the United States. We just don't have the number of sheep. There's too much demand for it. And there's no infrastructure. So to build the infrastructure, the service has to be provided, which makes it a very, very good economically sound business plan to get into sheep in the next 10 to 15 years for people in the town of Canandaigua, in my opinion. Especially if you guys are considering solar, because then it just makes sheep farming that much better.
How many can you put on an acre roughly?
So we say, and these are average adult ewes, we say 3. So if we're putting lambs on, it's probably 5. And then by the time they get to be about 100 pounds, we're pulling off the rams and sending them to market, but it's about the right time to pull them off anyway. So we get back to our equilibrium. But on solar in general, I mean, it's because also we're able to very easily rotate them around either from site to site or in between the sites, rotationally grazing them. We're really able to see an increase in that, you know, over say like just out on open pasture. Yeah, and a lower parasite load too, because now instead of having all your sheep on your farm, I can take my sheep from Oriskany Falls, drive them down 90 and drop them off in Manulus. It doesn't take me but an hour to load them up with my sheepdogs, stick them on the trailer, drop them off in Manulus. They got fresh new grass. There's no parasite load there. They are good to go, and it saves on shots. It saves on the amount of foot rot and things like that. And then when they're done in Manulus, we could just send them over to Fayetteville and then send them back to Oriskany Falls. And they're just bopping back and forth. And that's just one of my circuits. Personally, I'm on 12 sites, just my farm. Again, I'm managing about 2,800 total sheep, but
What about somebody locally though that say they want, say Rock Acres decides that, well, we wanna keep farming on that land, we wanna put sheep there.
I wanna talk to Rocket.
yeah, then that would be the
'Cause
ideal
we've got-
scenario.
But as far as, since they're not gonna have other places to move them around or whoever else might
We
want to
we can
decide.
cycle them,
Yeah.
cause we're technically working on 3 separate projects, right?
Yeah.
DePrima is one, and then Stockwell 1 and 2, there has to be, because of Public Service Commission regulations, we're gonna put a fence in between the two projects on County Road 30, so we can.
So most of these sites are divided up like that anyway, and when they're not, one of the recommendations we make is, hey, it's fairly inexpensive, put it in your design to just run some field fencing across and section these sites off. So that's another thing that they've already made that consideration with these sites. So Brock Acres would literally be able to have 3 separate arrays to move their sheep around just on these properties.
Could you maintain enough grass to graze though on one site, or do you need to rotate them around different sites like?
Well,
that?
that's just determined by the amount of sheep and how long you put them. It's time and numbers. So when it comes to grazing sheep, it's really, so what we do on some of our sites that we know we need to overwinter them is we'll put the correct number of sheep on, and then we'll pull the lamb rams off. And then just after the growth, after the first flush, right? When they're ready for the first market hit, and then the sheep will follow that first flush in, but they're basically just maintaining it. And then as soon as the weather drops off, we'll pull off the ewe lambs, and we'll let the foundation flock, we'll bring in a ram for breeding, and we'll let the foundation flock stay there till Christmas. And they'll have enough food left over under the panels, and it's still within regulation. So every site has a different action plan, and I work voluntarily with farmers to try and help them get this. We have a nonprofit that literally does this to help farmers in Canandaigua and all over the United States do exactly this. So if Brock Acres wanted, we could literally just say, here you go. This is exactly how you want to do it to make the most amount of money. I have enough, like I've got 40 requests for proposals on my desk right now for 33,000 acres. 33,000 acres of solar on my desk right now. I have to pick and choose. I have to go, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But most of them, I'm like, somebody else has got to do this stuff. Like, I mean, so I'm helping farmers get on these solar sites and actively manage them. That's what I do. That's my job. I mean, and I love it because, like I said, I come from a family that lost a dairy, and our farm went from this to an acre of land, and the bank owned everything else, you know. And now slowly we buying back bits and pieces and adding land back. But you know, it's like it's really great to be able to be like, okay, we can graze and manage our on this other land that's essentially tax free, and start building and growing our businesses. It's an excellent model for farming, an excellent model.
Following the question that Bob said of just a farmer that doesn't have the other facilities or other places where to take the sheep off, is there anywhere in the contract where they are not allowed to supplement after Christmas? Can they start supplementing the animals within the premises so the sheep doesn't have to go somewhere? Or do you guys say, no, if they're not grazing, they're out, you cannot just be feeding them there actively?
So, I mean, to me, obviously there's less growth in the winter that for me to be particularly concerned about. But, you know, if I take a cold arm's length thing is at the most basic, I want to make sure the vegetation is controlled. If something else comes about where they've got more animals on there and they're just posting them there, we'll probably have some contingencies about, you know, in a safe or reasonable amount more than what was presented. But as long as the main job is being pursued and you're not risking any other areas of, you know, just overwhelming the site, potentially causing damage to a worker who wants to come onto site because you've just overwhelmed them with sheep.
So I can speak to that a little bit because I actually have contracts that allow us to augment the feed through the winter months. And so how we have that set up, and this was a very tricky thing to negotiate, but now that we've done it, we actually, and if it became a thing where that was needed, I can share with you exactly what we've done to do this. So what we would do is we find the portions of the site that have the most bare soil or the worst soil, and then we roll out our round bales in those sites, and then we start actively trying to get that soil better by feeding them, and we put the round bales underneath the panels so that the snow and load doesn't get on them, just on the backside of the panel. But we've definitely done that. There are. It's not a preferred method, but especially down south where you can graze all the time. Like there's places in Ohio where we can graze literally all year round if you time your rotations correctly. Also in Virginia, but in New York, generally the panels become really amazing shelter, right? That's about it. After a certain point, so you can feed with creep feeders and your regular feed mixes and your minerals, or which is really low impact. They just slide on the snow and the sheep. You just basically drive your little tractor along and dump it in there and done. The reality though is that these contracts are vegetative maintenance contracts. They are not this is just free reign to do whatever you want. So once you start adding these other liability things, you as a farmer need to make it attractive to the asset owner. So what we did in that scenario is we said, we'll plow your site for you. I need access to my sheep. You need access to your panels. This is an expense you would normally be paying. I'm going to do it for free. Also, we made contingencies that there would be no stuff left over from round bales that we would personally seed after after the season where the round bales went out. Hopefully there was enough, seed if it was first cutting, and mostly it would be probably rams and not pregnant ewes out there anyway. But in the case that they were in this, we create an action plan for that, but you gotta cater it very much so that it's attractive to both parties. Because otherwise it becomes a liability issue, and I would say generally it's a no-go. So if you can't bring them back to your home farm, what we've done is also part of United Agrivoltaics. What I do with my company is we operate somewhat like a co-op. So there's a large dairy. You say, hey, look, I'm going to need these sheep next year. I can only overwinter 50. I've got 150. I'm going to say, hey, look, this guy over here has already put up the hay for your sheep. Truck them a half an hour south and put them at this barn, and he's going to take care of them for you. You can come pick them up in April, and they'll be bred or they'll be lambed out. So now that dairy farmer who used to be a dairy farmer who has this huge infrastructure is now getting paid a premium for his hay that he put up. He's getting paid to basically get these sheep going. So this is the sort of thing that we do to actually actively make sure that it is a feasible option. Now, not every farmer, that's my particular organization, that's my particular experience. I would say it would be a case by case scenario in that sort of thing. But we definitely do it, and we've done it. And I have multiple pictures of my rams out there in the snow eating underneath panels. It's quite glorious, really.
I appreciate all the information. Anybody have any other questions?
I'm good.
It's pretty cool stuff.
I think so.
Pretty
I get
interesting.
super passionate about it because I love farming,
What are, like, on a typical day, what are the daily labor needs on a site?
Well, I have one of our farm partners wants to go see her sheep every single day. And so she goes out there, but that's not necessary. A lot of people will do like weekly checkups, wellness checkups. We set up barn owl cameras. They're $300. They come with a little battery and a solar thing, and they look at our water trough. I have some sites, again, mostly with ram lambs, where I've gone weeks without checking them because I can see what their water usage is. I know that I've got minerals out there. I know that they're in a contained space. I know that they've got their CDC shots. I know that they've, before we put them on site, they're ready to go and grow. If one of them were to get stuck or something, so if we're using electronetting, I check every other day, minimum. If there's any electronetting, because sheep can get stuck in that. And that would be a tragedy if they died getting stuck in electronetting. But on sites where we've just put the sheep there for 3 or 4 weeks and we're going to move them to another site, I don't check on them until I move them again. And then we do our head counts, we do our wellness checks. Everybody gets their feet checked on the way off the trailer. So we're just, it's just a process. It's a good way to get your hands on the animals, more so than probably other farms that they're just out there, because we're actively catching these guys more regularly. It's great work for our border collies, and we have a lot of fun with it. My niece is, going to competitions and stuff with her dog. And
I'm assuming that you have portable chutes and everything for shearing and things, so you just don't shear them.
so we just do hair sheep, except for our Icelandics rue their wool automatically. There's a couple we have to catch and just do a little touch up on, but for our containment systems, we have we just use hod panels and stainless steel clips, and we just make them like an accordion and then just set them up, and we just run them into the chute. It's easy to move, easy to load on a trailer, and then we use those to go around the inverter pads if they're not already there, and then the sheep can't get to the inverter pads. Then we reopen them up and use them as catch chutes. It's the most economical way to do it. Those chutes you're talking about, is very expensive. They're
there is all types of it, right?
Yeah, and you can start spending anywhere from $16,000 to $100,000 on these catch systems. It's just you can't really justify that, and also a lot of times they're trailers that you've got to move They're on, they're portable. They're great units, but for the scale that we're working with, everything's micro scaled, and so because we're towing trailers back and forth between sites already, we don't want a second convoy truck if we don't have to. So
in a place in the contract in there, it said that you couldn't drive in, right? You could only drive to specific areas in there. So when you're
So the way we design our sites, right, is that there is access from the road, access in, and then there's controlled pavement to our central inverter, our central electrical station.
Mhm.
And we would, because we put gravel on there and maintain that and everything. We would want all vehicles to stay on there. Sometimes we let our maintenance techs go around, and if they had
UTVs, or
UTVs.
light duty stuff.
Yeah,
We drive our little
light
buggies
duty
around
stuff
all
can
the
go
time.
around, but
Yeah.
heavy haul we would only want on our.
I was just
primary
more
access road.
thinking if that is enough to get the trailer all the way, locked doors so that
Yeah.
you're under control when you're loading, unloading, and nothing just escaping.
Yep,
Until you close
absolutely. And
something.
one of the recommendations we make, and it's purely a recommendation because it doesn't change the price, are installing rolling doors. Because the rolly gates are so easy to close behind your gate, and you don't have the wind like blowing them into your truck and stuff. And also, if there's like a little grade change, you're not like hitting the gate here and trying to get your truck around it. It's also better for coyotes because the swinging gates usually have to be like this high off the ground to miss any grade changes and stuff. And a coyote could slip under that. So the rolly gates are closer to the ground, and that's a recommendation we like making. Other than that, sometimes we put like snow fencing up. It's less attractive, if there's a breach area that we think maybe a coyote might get through. But again, these guys are on the forefront of this, already thinking about this stuff ahead of time. The experiences we have are with sites that have already been built that didn't have these considerations. So all this stuff they're getting as recommendations from me ahead of time, which is, I think, very good on their part to enlist my services, because I think that it's forward thinking, personally. But yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah.
I guess to round all this out, I would just bring it back to the start, right? We were talking about these projects were here in front of you guys in July. And they went forward to the planning board with this is a loss of valuable agricultural land. We think we've got a case in which it's not, but I guess procedurally, how do we get to review that review that you guys made in July? And maybe, is that a question for you, Sarah, or is that who is the chair of this?
I'm the chair.
Yeah, he's
the
I mean, I do think that's a lot of information that most of us have never heard before.
Mhm.
I do think we probably should discuss it as a committee more. I don't know what the rest of you feel about that. I think there's a lot of information to think about. I think I've come up with a lot more questions than anything else now that I heard more about it too.
Slightly
a lot of
unrelated.
Can I just ask one more question then so I guess I'm asking because I'm just trying to check in on progress and know what the next appropriate time is to re-engage with the town, say, what is the status? So does that mean you'll sort of take this quietly into your next committee session next month, or are you guys able to meet and discuss before next month? I mean, procedurally, what happens?
What I'm thinking right now was that we could take this information to our meeting next month, because there's a couple people that aren't here also, so we could discuss that and move forward from there. What do you think of that, Fernando?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that we gotta reassess
Yeah.
without any new requests from the planning board, right? So there is not a precedent of what is the route or anything like that.
Sure. So I mean, I guess
I know.
I don't know. Do I need to go back and put something formally to the Shauna Bonchak, the planning director, or mean, I'm just trying to make sure
Yeah,
So
what I
I
was
make
gonna
the,
say is that
make the right
with
request.
this committee, you know, if they wanna relook at it, they obviously can, but as far as like official comments and with the planning board and everything, this committee's just an advisory board, so if the planning board wants new comments, they can request it. So it might be more of a conversation with staff, you know, to figure out if that's even, you know, how one would go about doing that, but within this committee, you know, they don't, you know, they can relook at whatever they want, but, you know, what that means as far as an application with the planning board, that we'll just have to see how that works, cause do you have an active application right now?
So we had a sketch plan, and
Right.
that's what I presented in August, and you know, just procedurally, if we were to seek special use permit in the town of Canandaigua, I'll break it into two pretty easy categories. One is,
If you came back with a special use permit application, it would come back to this committee anyway.
okay.
Cause that's
So, but
that
yeah,
as a separate application.
Sure.
As a sketch plan and then, you know, it's just the first look. If you come with a special use permit application, then it's a separate application and they would see it again anyway.
okay, so yeah, so if I can just like finish this thought, right, is that there are two general areas of conditions that we would need to fulfill to get a special use permit from the planning board, right? One is a lot of solar specific requirements about how far I need to be set back off of the property lines, decommissioning plan, operations and maintenance plan, the decommissioning bond, whole lot of technical specifications, and as part of town law, it needs to not be a loss of valuable agricultural farmland. And getting back to the point, this committee made a recommendation to the planning board that as what they saw previously, it was, and so if there's a way to revise that,
I
if
think that
that is ready to be revised, I can know before I engage all my engineers to go forward and do a full special use permit.
As of today, we can't give you any advice on that.
I understand,
But-
that's clear. I guess I'm just asking, I guess, the chair, if there is a means to review that July assessment, that is what I'm
Well-
curious.
I think our committee will discuss all the things that we learned today
Okay,
and decide if we think we need to review it, and then whatever has to, anything staff-wise or anything, you know better the rules of what needs to happen,
Yeah,
so.
usually we receive a formal referral from the planning board, and that's the point at which, just like what happened in July with your sketch plan, and that's the point at which the committee gives the review, but if you're looking for a new application, then it would come back, but you're saying, can we revise, would they be willing to revise or consider looking into it again for the same application?
I think
those
your
are
question is,
questions
will
I
we
have to
change our
ask.
mind based on the information you provide?
I'm that is the
Yeah.
that is the eventual question I want to
Yeah.
ask.
So-
Yes, but I am willing
But the,
to pause and say, are you willing to reconsider and just
I think
take a fresh look?
what we can fairly say is we now have information we did not have when we first
Right.
made our determination.
Yeah.
We also don't have all the members of the committee today.
Okay.
So predicting an outcome, it's impossible, but we do have new information that was not available when we first discussed.
And
The
as
first
Fernando said
application.
earlier, we've never had a situation that we've
Right.
learned more about afterwards, so I think
Okay.
we'll discuss it. I can't say whether, we'll discuss it and decide whether we think we need to review our
Okay.
original.
So then your next meeting is second Thursday of the month.
Correct.
In
So-
November.
Second Thursday in November is your next.
Slightly a side comment, if you put systems all over the country, what is the difference in the efficacy of solar in the Northeast versus Southwest versus South?
We should be putting as much as possible in the Southwest. It's 2x. You put the same panel in Arizona as you do in New York State. You get twice as much power, energy over the air. Sorry.
I gotta go, I'm sorry. My Greg's here to pick me up. He dropped
Okay.
me off earlier, so.
Is Doug on to discuss the other stuff? or-
No, we
Okay.
figured it was just too much for one night,
Okay.
so we can push that off. But you don't have to stop on account of me. She can close the Zoom down. But I'll let you know if Court's still here.
Okay.
I will,
Thanks.
next month I'll be out of town when we're normally gonna have our meeting, so we'll be in
We
touch
email
about-
back and forth
yeah.
about- Okay. All right. It was nice to meet you both. and
Thank
It
you,
was
Sarah.
nice to meet you
Yeah.
as well. Thanks.
Appreciate
Good
you
talking
setting
to
stuff.
you.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, they're still down there, Kim. So
They're okay.
don't worry about
Perfect.
locking doors or anything.
So the first scale projects that we got Caleb deployed on, they were actually, they're fixed tilt, so they were just 20-degree tilt facing due south. The efficiency number attributed to them it was about 14%, which means that over the, over the 8,760 hours of the year, you can get 14% of those hours are full-on power. Now, that's actually spread around, and I can do a whole mathematical thing about how it spreads out more in the summer, less in the winter. But Desert Southwest is significantly more efficient. And there's
So is it still worth it to be putting that much in the Northeast versus focusing on the Southwest and doing other energy harvesting in the?
So my answer to that is just we need more. I mean, America's growing in electricity needs, right? And if all the governments are serious about electrifying transportation or electrifying heat, we're just going to need more. New York State has goals to be carbon neutral by 2040. And what I don't know that people want to talk about yet is nuclear. If that's a topic that just takes on a whole nother path. So if you don't want to do that and you're going to be carbon
I'm
neutral,
not
then
advocating one way or the other. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand because there is other options, right? There is for being carbon neutral, and think about manure digesters.
Mhm.
And there is a lot that can be done in that direction that is not being explored because it's not as hot topic right now.
So
Independent of politics, I want to
Yeah.
know how truly efficient it is to be putting solar in New York versus looking for the next energy source and focusing solar where it's.
So, like I said, I work in solar, but I fully support all the above, right? I mean, yes, we should be putting more carbon-free electricity everywhere, right? I mean, that's just a fact. But I can tell you, block and tackle just daily in and out of trying to get a power plant built anywhere is not easy, right? And so New York has said, we want to be party to this, and we want to transition our energy system. My home state of Maryland has said, sure, we want to do that too, but they haven't made any land available to that, and Maryland's going to take a different tack and go all in on wind power, right? Wind power over on the beaches, right offshore, whereas I think New York State already has a history and a lot of fight against wind turbines. And again, we all quickly get back to nuclear or hydropower. Maine recently rejected a transmission line through their state, which would have delivered a whole bunch of zero carbon electricity from the St. Lawrence River, hydroelectricity to Portland.
I had a
And-
friend
and-
working in that project.
Yeah, and Maine said, no thanks, right? So politically, it was not sustainable in the state of Maine. So what are they gonna do? I
But
don't know.
in your sense, having lower efficiency and having to pay for all of this, it's still profitable if the government had no additional incentives. If it was just open market, producing electricity at the price that producers are paying for it without government incentives, is it a profitable thing to put in?
So
panels here.
I will say, Desert Southwest, no incentives required. It's just straight up competitive. Into the Southeast, it's neck and neck between all of the resources. Here in the Northeast, the electricity generated by renewable energy still requires incentives and
To be profitable.
to be profitable. And that's simply the state of play.
From an objective, like non-biased, maybe like viewpoint, I would say though, there is value to having the security of our own infrastructure when it comes to power generation. So, having our state be energy independent and not have to rely as much on other sorts of grid systems is I think a good thing, but more to the point, I think they make amazing shelters for sheep. So by that very standard, I think it's worth it. You know, to have like sheds out there, just endless sheds for your sheep, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, and then we can start talking about externalities, right? Like, at what cost has natural gas come out of all that Marcellus share? Right? Like, how many aquifers have been ruined by those? I mean,
I'm not sure in one way or the other. I mean,
right?
if you ask
there's
me,
a very big picture.
Northeast, you put nuclear and you go solar on the south, but that's just
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Yeah.
me thinking 100% efficient. This
Thank you.
program attracts me.
Yeah.
Will I be interested in being one of those? Yeah. I mean, I don't mind having more places where my limitation is acreage.
That's right.
So I don't have more animals because I don't have more acreage. This is interesting.
Yeah.
I still have a little problem with I have incentives is the only way to pay it. And then can we find more efficient ways of producing things regionally specific? And if incentives have to be played, I'm a pretty big proponent of open markets, right? So in that case,
well, I mean, it just goes back to one thing that gas and oil companies can do is something called master limited partnerships. Have you ever heard of these?
no.
This is just one of these ways where these companies have been, having federal lobbyists for decades and hundreds of years, in which they have structured their company so that Exxon or Chevron creates a master limited partnership in which they can pass through profits that don't get taxed, right? And so they have written themselves into the walls.
They have written their own incentives.
Yeah, I mean, they have written their own incentives that, don't pay attention to all this money flowing over here, which it's just part of the master limited partnership, right? Don't pay attention. It's like there are billions, if not trillions of dollars passing by that don't get the same level of taxation that our revenues are gonna get.
Our hard-earned dollars.
So, I mean.
We're not here to solve political issues because that's never going to be solved.
Yes.
I do appreciate the
one
presentation.
man's incentive is another man's subsidy, right? Like,
Yeah.
and one man's externality is just something that shouldn't be costed, right? Like, should we be paying for all this other carbon? That's a political question, right?
Yeah.
Right now, like, whereas SOx and NOx and pollution in groundwater, everyone believes we should pay for that. But carbon is still not resolved.
And maybe to be plain, I had applied for some of my customers to get carbon credits because we use certain additives that reduce methane in cow production, which I don't know if you use Agolim, but there is a program out there. Anyway, I still don't agree with this carbon credit because I think it's just fictitious money, but yes, I'm applying because my customers can get some money out of it that we're moving along.
If there's money to be made.
So there is actually right now, Pasture Map and Indigo Carbon